Something that's been bothering me for a little while now is this thing that's going around as to whether or not we're socially conservative or socially liberal. And that's one of the general positions that's given in society to delineate one side of the allowed debate and the other side of the allowed debate. You know, that conservative, liberal view that is predominant, so that we don't discuss things like class or power structures or anything like that. And we've got a lot of people running around, particularly the Patsocks, saying, well, I am socially conservative, so therefore, ... And in history, Marxists were socially conservative, ... And the other side of that, the anti-Patsock side, the anti-Eurasian closeted fascist side, is we have to be permissible to absolutely everything because we're socially liberal. Now, I would like to say this very straightly. We are, as we were originally intended to be called, scientific socialists. We are Marxists, scientific socialism. We are not socially liberal or socially conservative. We are scientific analysis of each issue. We will go through the science of each issue, understand it, then understand it in the context of a society as a whole, very similar to how we understand economics. You look at the atomized example, and then you see it as it functions within a system, everything else, engaging with the other contradictions in society. And from there, we make the decision of whether or not something is harmful for society. That is how we are supposed to do it. We are not, everything is automatically permissible until it's not, and it's simply nothing is permissible until we say it is. That's not how this works. Both of those positions are anti-scientific. Because if we're here trying to change society, like completely radically alter it into a completely new society with a completely different concepts of morals and justice and fairness, that would require a complete reorientation of these positions as well. It would no longer, it couldn't be simply a case of socially liberal or conservative. It would have to rest on a scientific analysis of both of those things. Of those things, and then decide what their place in society should be, how much influence they should wield, what would be okay and what wouldn't be okay. Big difference. The Patsocks or the Eurasian types tend to immediately dislike everything that is considered in the least bit liberal, and let's be honest, anything that's anti-Bible. That's the real crux of everything they're saying. They're really saying Judeo-Christian values, and mostly Christian values. And when they say Christian values, they really mean the Protestant values, the really, really reactionary American founding-based reactionary Protestant Christian values. It should be noted very specifically that despite the debate going on as to whether or not homosexuality is permissible according to the Bible, because you can argue the translation of man shall not lie with another man, etc., and whatnot. I think a better question is, who cares what the Bible says? Does it matter what the Bible actually says? No. Because regardless of regardless of what the correct translation is, that shouldn't be our decision-making process anyway. And I think a lot of the Patsocks have forgotten that. The Bible doesn't tell us how to live. At all. A book which very clearly was not written by God. Nor is it that we have to instantly and automatically go against everything that the Bible says. That's the problem here. That's the false perception, that the false dichotomy that we're getting. We are not supposed to automatically agree with everything the Bible says as the socially conservative Marxist-Leninists, in other words, anti-scientific so-called socialists, and we are not supposed to oppose everything the Bible says automatically either, because that would also be an unscientific position, which a lot of Marxists are doing as well. That's not what we do. We do the analysis, and then we make a determination from there. We do not simply oppose automatically, and we do not simply support automatically. People can make the fair statement that in the past, previous communist societies were socially conservative. The Soviet Union didn't recognize same-sex unions, etc. You could point to the example of East Germany that did. In fact, a cursory inspection into transgenderism in Eastern Germany would give you some pretty interesting new information. But it doesn't matter what a previous society was. Revolutionary China saw homosexuality as bourgeois decadence. Today, that's ridiculous. What was even the theoretical foundation for that? And in fact, I believe it was up until 1990, the revolutionary, the Avakian Party still considered that to be the truth. But it's not the truth, because homosexuality kind of existed long before the bourgeoisie did. I mean, it was an incorrect idea held at a time. Can we really blame them for holding that position? Not really. We can only blame ourselves for continuing to hold that position. That just because a past Marxist society saw something as unacceptable doesn't mean that it would be unacceptable now. You see, that's the point of science, is to obtain more information than you previously had and then make changes as necessary. We know far more about homosexuality now than we did in the early 1900s or even the 1850s in Marx's time. It's one of the things reactionaries like to do. You see, there's Marx. He was being really homophobic. Yeah, it was the 1850s. Who wasn't homophobic? Like it's like a ridiculous argument. It's like saying, well, Reagan tried to take away. Reagan wrote the first laws against assault rifles, so therefore, whatever argument you could kind of make from that. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. It's not actually relevant. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't determine whether something is right or wrong. That's like an appeal to authority. And even if trying to say, well, look, Marx was against gays, so therefore you have to be against gays too. Marx was a homophobe, so why aren't you a homophobe as well? Because we know more about human sexuality and sexual orientation than Marx did during his time. So what's your point? So what? I mean, by that logic, we could just say any conservative, why aren't you putting leeches on your skin to get rid of the demons in your blood? You should take some cocaine about it. That might not actually be that bad of an idea, but you see what I mean. That just because a past society or leader said something was a good idea doesn't mean it necessarily is. Just because they say it's a bad idea doesn't mean it necessarily is. If you're literally not changing your positions as new information comes in, and growing and understanding new things and creating new theories, then you're not doing science. That's kind of the fucking problem here. People aren't doing science. People are doing the Eurasian bullshit of like, yeah, anything that's like Western decadence is automatically bad, and that decadence being basically anything the Bible says is bad. And the same thing with the people who say that anything that the Bible says is automatically incorrect. That isn't how we do this. And you're both the problem. You're both being anti-scientific about it. I mean, what are you going to do? Whether you're socially liberal or socially conservative, and that's how you define yourself, what are you going to say to me right now? That you're wrong for suggesting that we should place science over these preconceived notions of socially liberal or socially conservative? Well, if you're attacking me for that, how are you calling yourself a Marxist? We're supposed to be scientific, and me reminding you that we're supposed to be scientific isn't supposed to be a reason to attack me, though it certainly will be a cause for a lot of people to attack me for it. I'm going to get it from both sides. Because that's not how this works, and that's a problem with first worldism. It doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to evolve. It doesn't want to think anything's are different. Like, why would anybody even say they are a Marxist-Leninist today? Okay, we don't live in the early 1900s. The world has massively changed since that time. Even somebody could say, like, okay, I'm a regular Maoist. Well, okay, but we don't live in the 1960s either. The world has radically and fundamentally changed since that time. Even someone saying that they're a classical Marxist. In other words, imperialism doesn't exist, apparently. And the Bolshevik Revolution never happened, apparently. A lot of this is really deeply dug firmly into the fact that people do not want to update their theory. If you don't want to like third worldism, by all means, you've got every right to irrationally hate something if you want to. And maybe even if you have a good reason for hating it. But you can't just sit there in the past and not update your theory. I mean, if you literally think that Marxism, Leninism, as it was laid out by Lenin, is perfectly and equally applicable today as it was in World War I, you're foolish. You got to step your game up. It was even to some degree obsolete going into World War II. And God, with globalization, the globalization of the economy, the fact that you take the biggest banking institutions in the world, they don't even have countries anymore. Goldman Sachs exists in basically every country simultaneously. Even the bourgeoisie have even acknowledged, well, the problem with dealing with a lot of the big banks is that they're outside the jurisdiction of, some of them are outside of the jurisdiction of the United States, and there would have to be some kind of international banking regulation in order to say that. And so, in other words, you're saying that the big banks are outside of the democratic controls of bourgeois society. Okay, even bourgeois theory is falling behind in that regard. We've got to update shit, people. Like I say, if you don't like third worldism, fine, go ahead, don't like it. Then propose something. Propose an updated version. Propose something that would clearly demonstrate who is the revolutionary and who are the anti-revolutionary classes in the US, the second world, and the third world. By all means, do so, because we need to do it. And that's if you don't agree with third worldism. Then fine that, do it. But you can't just sit here and just pretend nothing's changed. You can't just sit here and say, like, nothing's evolved, nothing's changed, and the world's the same as it was in the 1960s and the 1910s, or God forbid the 1850s in Marx's time. In the last couple decades, we've been nothing more than a joke. A repeated failure to do anything of any significance. And that's something we need to work on. So I'm saying, people, all we need to do is update our theories. We need to work on it. We can't just simply accept preconceived notions where these positions become identities. Well, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, so I'm going to do whatever a Marxist-Leninist would do. I am a Maoist. I'm going to do whatever a Maoist would do. This is identity politics, a really insane version of identity politics on top of it, because you're taking those political theories and making them into identities rather than the scientific analysis that they are supposed to be. So come on, people. Get it together.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.